Corinne Hawthorne stood in the auction yard dust, with her heart hammering and her jaw set, watching Cole Sloan step through the crowd like a ghost she had buried 6 years ago. The cattle buyer moved with the same quiet certainty that had once made her foolish enough to promise him everything. Now he was here in Stone Creek, at her ranch auction, with half the town watching, and her brother already whispering poison in every ear that would listen. She kept her hands steady at her sides and her voice level when she called across the yard. "Cole, I did not send for you." He stopped 3 paces away, hat brim shadowing his eyes, coat dusty from the trail. "I know, Corinne. I came anyway." The way he said her name, low and careful, sent a jolt through her chest that she refused to acknowledge. Around them, men shifted and muttered. Her brother Nathaniel stood near the auction platform, with his arms crossed and his mouth curved in something that was not quite a smile. Corinne felt the weight of every watching eye. 6 years ago, she and Cole had planned to marry in secret, to escape her controlling family and his wandering life. They had met at a chapel outside Abilene, with witnesses paid to stay silent. But her father had found out hours before the ceremony, and Cole had vanished the same night, leaving her to face the ruin alone. She had spent the years since clawing her way back to respectability, buying Juniper Ranch with money saved from a loveless marriage that had ended in her husband's early death. Now the ranch was hers, but Nathaniel wanted it, and he had been spreading lies about her management to force this auction. Cole took another step closer, and she saw the lines around his eyes that had not been there before, the way his shoulders carried some weight she could not name. "Why are you here?" she said. He glanced past her at the auction platform, at Nathaniel, at the gathered buyers who were already calculating what they could strip from Juniper Ranch. "Because someone sent word you were in trouble," he said. "And because I never finished what I started." Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him it was too late, that she had learned to stand alone, that his help would only make the scandal worse. But the truth was simpler and more desperate. Nathaniel had been sabotaging her for months. Fences cut, cattle driven off, water sources poisoned. She had lost 3 buyers already, scared off by whispers that she was unstable, that the ranch was cursed, that her husband's death had left her broken. This auction was Nathaniel's final move, a forced sale he had pushed through with help from men on the town council who owed him favors. If she could not prove her ranch was worth keeping, she would lose everything. And if she lost the ranch, she lost the only proof she had ever built something that mattered. Cole was still watching her, waiting. She realized the entire yard had gone quiet. The auctioneer stood on the platform with his gavel raised, frozen mid-motion. Nathaniel was staring at Cole with recognition dawning in his eyes. And Corinne knew her brother would use this reunion as another weapon, if she let him. She straightened her spine and kept her voice cool. "If you are here to buy, Mr. Sloan, you will have to bid like everyone else." Cole's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I am not here to buy your ranch, Corinne. I am here to make sure no one steals it." Before she could answer, Nathaniel stepped forward. His voice carried across the yard, loud and mocking. Well, Cole Sloan. I heard you were still drifting around buying other men's cattle. Funny you would show up now." Cole did not look at him. He kept his eyes on Corinne. "I go where I am needed," he said. Nathaniel laughed, sharp and ugly. My sister does not need a man who ran out on her once already. She needs someone who can actually manage a ranch, not some drifter with a reputation for bad debts and worse judgment. Corinne felt heat flood her face. Nathaniel was baiting them both, trying to turn the crowd against her by linking her to Cole's past. She opened her mouth to cut her brother down, but Cole spoke first, his voice quiet and edged with something dangerous. I never ran out on her. I was driven off. And the only bad judgment I see here is yours, Hawthorne. You have been sabotaging your own sister to steal her land. That is not ranching. That is cowardice. The crowd murmured, a low ripple of shock and interest. Nathaniel's face darkened. You have no proof of that. Cole did not move. Not yet, he said. But I will. Corinne felt something shift inside her chest, a crack in the wall she had built against hope. She had spent 6 years believing Cole had abandoned her because he was weak or indifferent. But the way he stood now, calm and immovable in front of a hostile crowd, did not look like weakness. It looked like a man who had been waiting for the right moment to come back. The auctioneer cleared his throat, nervous. Folks, we have a schedule. If there are no objections, we will begin the bidding on Juniper Ranch livestock and equipment. Corinne turned to face the platform. I have an objection, she said. Her voice rang clear. This auction was called under false pretenses. My ranch is solvent. I have records to prove it. But someone has been interfering with my operations to make it look otherwise. Nathaniel stepped closer, his smile thin and cold. Records can be faked, sister. You have always been better at talking than managing. Cole moved then, stepping between them without touching either one. He looked at Nathaniel with the kind of patience that was more threatening than anger. If you are so confident, he said, then you will not mind a formal investigation. I am willing to testify to what I know. And I am willing to put my own name behind Corinne's ranch until the truth comes out. The crowd stirred again, louder now. Corinne stared at Cole, her pulse loud in her ears. He was offering to stake his reputation, maybe his livelihood, on her word. It was the kind of gesture she had dreamed of 6 years ago, and it terrified her now, because she did not know if she could trust it. Nathaniel's face twisted. You have no standing here, Sloan. You are nobody. Cole smiled, and it was not a kind smile. I am a registered cattle buyer with contacts in 4 territories. I have bank references in Dodge City and Wichita. And I have a very good memory for men who cheat their partners. If you want to make this a legal fight, Nathaniel, I will be happy to bring witnesses. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Nathaniel spun on his heel and stalked toward the auction office, slamming the door behind him. The auctioneer looked between Corinne and Cole, clearly uncertain. Ma'am, he said, if there is a dispute, I will need to postpone the sale until the council reviews the claim. Corinne nodded, her throat tight. That is acceptable. The crowd began to break apart, men drifting toward their horses or clustering in small groups to gossip. Corinne stood in the emptying yard with Cole beside her, the dust settling around them like a held breath. She did not look at him. She could not yet. Why did you really come back? She said. His voice was low, meant only for her. Because I never stopped thinking about you. Because I owed you the truth. And because when I heard your name attached to a scandal, I knew your brother was behind it. She turned then, meeting his eyes. The truth, she said. You left me standing in that chapel. My father told me you took money to disappear. Cole's jaw tightened. Your father lied. He did not pay me. He threatened to ruin me, to make sure I could never buy cattle again, to spread word I was a thief. I was 24 and stupid, and I thought if I left, he would let you alone. I thought you would be safer without me. Corinne felt the old anger flare, hot and sharp. You thought wrong. He ruined me anyway. He forced me into a marriage with a man twice my age who drank himself to death in 3 years. I spent those years silent and obedient, waiting for him to die so I could finally have something of my own. Cole flinched, and she saw real pain cross his face. I am sorry, he said. I thought I was protecting you. She wanted to hit him. She wanted to cry. Instead, she kept her voice steady. I do not need protection, Cole. I need proof that Nathaniel has been sabotaging me. And I need to keep this ranch. If you can help with that, then stay. If you are here out of guilt or some misplaced sense of honor, then leave now before you make things worse. He held her gaze. I am here because you matter, Corinne. You always did. That is not guilt. That is the truth. She did not know what to say to that. The words were too close to what she had wanted to hear 6 years ago, and too dangerous to believe now. She turned and walked toward the ranch house, her boots crunching on gravel. After a moment, she heard Cole follow. The house was small and sturdy, built from stone and timber, with a wide porch that faced the hills. She had painted the shutters herself, pale blue against the gray stone. It was not grand, but it was hers. Inside, the air was cool and dim. She lit a lamp and moved to the table where she kept her ledgers. Cole stood in the doorway, his hat in his hands. Show me the records, he said. She pulled out the heavy books and spread them across the table. Every transaction, every head of cattle, every repair, every expense. She had documented everything with obsessive care, knowing Nathaniel would look for any excuse to challenge her. Cole leaned over the table, his eyes scanning the columns. After a long silence, he straightened. This is solid work, Corinne. You have been running this ranch at a profit. Anyone who looks at these numbers will see that. She crossed her arms. Then why is the council allowing the auction? He frowned. Because someone convinced them the numbers are false. Or because they owe your brother favors. Or both. She felt the frustration rise again. So what do we do? He tapped the ledger. We find witnesses who can confirm these transactions. Buyers, suppliers, ranch hands. And we find proof of Nathaniel's sabotage. Someone saw those fences cut. Someone knows where your cattle went. She shook her head. I have tried. People are afraid of Nathaniel. He has money and influence, and I am just a widow with a struggling ranch. No one will stand against him. Cole looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Then we make them more afraid of losing their integrity than of crossing your brother. We go to the territorial marshal. We make this bigger than Stone Creek. She blinked. The marshal? Cole nodded. If Nathaniel has been committing fraud and sabotage, that is a territorial crime. The marshal has authority over the local council. And if we can prove Nathaniel has been lying, the council will have to back down or risk their own positions. It made sense, but it also made her chest tighten with fear. Bringing in the marshal meant escalating the fight, It meant making enemies of powerful men. It meant risking everything on the chance that justice would actually work. Cole must have seen the doubt in her face. "I know it is a risk," he said quietly. "But doing nothing is a bigger one." She met his eyes. "And if we lose? Then we lose together," he said. "That is more than I gave you last time." The words settled between them, heavy and real. Corinne felt something loosen in her chest, a knot she had carried for 6 years. She did not forgive him, not yet. But she believed he meant what he said. "All right," she said. "We go to the Marshall." They left the house as the sun angled toward late afternoon. Cole's horse was tied near the barn, a sturdy roan gelding with intelligent eyes. Corinne saddled her own mare, a gray with a white blaze, and they rode out together toward the main road. The land rolled away in dry hills and scattered juniper, the sky wide and pale. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence was not comfortable, but it was not hostile either. It was the silence of two people who had once known each other well and were now trying to remember how. Finally, Cole said, "Tell me about Nathaniel. What changed?" Corinne kept her eyes on the road. "Our father died 2 years ago. He left the family land to Nathaniel and a small sum to me. Nathaniel expected me to stay dependent, maybe move back to the main house and live as his spinster sister. Instead, I used my inheritance and my widow's settlement to buy Juniper Ranch. He has hated me for it ever since." Cole was quiet for a moment. "He wants the land?" She nodded. "Juniper Ranch has water rights that connect to the family property. If he controls both, he controls a much larger grazing territory. He has been trying to buy me out since the day I moved in. When I refused, he started making trouble." Cole's jaw tightened. "And no one stopped him." She glanced at him. "You sound surprised." He shook his head. "I am angry. There is a difference." She felt a flicker of warmth at that, unexpected and unwelcome. She pushed it down. They reached Stone Creek as the shadows lengthened. The town was small and raw. A dozen buildings clustered around a wide main street. The saloon, the general store, the land office, the church, the marshal's office. Corinne had lived here for 2 years, but she still felt like an outsider. People were polite to her face and cold behind her back. She knew what they said, that she was too proud, that she had married for money and gotten what she deserved, that a woman alone could not run a ranch without a man to guide her. Cole tied the horses outside the marshal's office, a narrow building with barred windows. Inside, the marshal sat behind a scarred desk, a gray-haired man with a drooping mustache and tired eyes. His name was Ben Carver, and he had been marshal for 15 years. He looked up when they entered, his gaze moving from Corinne to Cole and back again. "Mrs. Hawthorne," he said, "what can I do for you?" Corinne stepped forward, her hands steady. "I am here to file a formal complaint against my brother, Nathaniel Hawthorne. I have evidence that he has been sabotaging my ranch to force a fraudulent sale." Carver's eyebrows rose. "That is a serious accusation." She met his gaze. "I have serious evidence." She laid the ledgers on the desk, along with a list of incidents she had documented over the past 6 months. Fences cut on 3 occasions. Cattle driven off twice. A water source poisoned. Buyers warned away with false rumors. Carver flipped through the pages slowly. His expression gave nothing away. Do you have witnesses to any of this? He said. Corinne hesitated. Not directly. But I have documentation of the financial losses, and I can show the pattern. Carver closed the ledger. Pattern is not proof, ma'am. Without witnesses or physical evidence tying your brother to these acts, I cannot arrest him. Frustration burned in Corinne's throat. So he can destroy my livelihood and I have no recourse? Carver sighed. I am not saying I do not believe you. I am saying the law requires evidence. If you can bring me a witness who saw Nathaniel or his men committing sabotage, I will investigate. Until then, my hands are tied. Cole spoke for the first time, his voice calm and deliberate. What if we can prove he lied to the town council to force the auction? Would that be enough? Carver looked at him, measuring. Who are you? Cole Sloan. I am a cattle buyer, and I have done business in this territory for 8 years. I am willing to testify that Mrs. Hawthorne's ranch is financially sound, and that the auction was called under false pretenses. Carver leaned back in his chair. That might be enough to delay the sale, but it will not stop Nathaniel unless you can prove fraud. And even then, the council might just issue a fine. Cole nodded. Then we will find more. Carver studied them both for a long moment. Then he pulled a sheet of paper from his desk. I will send an inquiry to the council and request they postpone the auction pending investigation. That buys you some time. But if you are going after Nathaniel Hawthorne, you better have your facts straight. He has friends in this town. They left the office as the sun touched the horizon. The street was quieter now. Most of the businesses closed for the evening. Corinne felt the weight of exhaustion settling into her bones. It had been a long day, and they had gained only a delay, not a victory. Cole walked beside her, silent. When they reached the horses, he said, "You should not ride back alone tonight. Stay in town. There is a boarding house." She shook her head. "I am not leaving my ranch unguarded. Not with Nathaniel looking for another way to hurt me. Then I am coming with you," Cole said. She started to argue, then stopped. The truth was, she did not want to be alone tonight. And the truth beneath that was more complicated. A tangle of old feelings and new fear that she did not have the energy to untangle. "All right," she said. They rode back through the dusk, the sky fading from gold to purple. By the time they reached Juniper Ranch, the first stars were showing. Corinne unsaddled her mare and rubbed her down while Cole did the same with his roan. The barn smelled of hay and leather and the warm scent of horses. It was familiar and grounding. Inside the house, Corinne lit lamps and started a fire in the stove. She made coffee and set out bread and cold meat. They ate in silence, the firelight flickering over the simple furniture. Cole sat across from her, his face shadowed and thoughtful. After a while, he said, "I never stopped thinking about that day, Corinne. The chapel. The way you looked when you walked in. I've carried that with me for 6 years." She looked down at her cup. "I thought you ran because you did not want me." He leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. "I wanted you more than I have ever wanted anything. That was the problem. Your father knew it. He knew if I stayed, I would fight him for you, and he would ruin both of us. So he gave me a choice. Leave, and you would be safe. Stay, and he would destroy my name and yours." Corinne felt tears prick her eyes, hot and unwelcome. "You should have let me choose," I know, Cole said. I was a coward. I thought I was being noble, but I was just afraid. She wiped her eyes, angry at herself for crying. I spent 3 years married to a man I did not love, waiting for my life to start. And when he died, I thought I was free. But I am still fighting. Still proving I have the right to exist without someone controlling me. Cole reached across the table and took her hand. His grip was warm and rough, and she did not pull away. You have already proven it, he said. You have built something real here, and I am going to help you keep it. She met his eyes, and for the first time in 6 years, she let herself believe him. They sat there in the firelight, hands joined. The silence between them no longer empty, but full of things they were not yet ready to say. That night, Cole slept in the barn. Corinne offered him the spare room, but he refused, saying he did not want to give the town more ammunition against her reputation. She did not argue. She was grateful for his presence, but she was not ready to have him that close. Not yet. She lay awake in her narrow bed, listening to the wind and thinking about the way his hand had felt in hers. In the morning, she woke to the sound of someone pounding on her door. She dressed quickly and hurried downstairs. Cole was already outside, standing between her and 3 men on horseback. Nathaniel sat in the center, flanked by 2 ranch hands Corinne recognized from the family property. Her brother's face was cold and hard. You have made a mistake, Corinne, he said. Filing a complaint against me. Bringing this drifter back into your life. You are only making things worse for yourself. Cole did not move. She has every right to defend her property. Nathaniel ignored him. I am here to make you an offer, sister. Sell me the ranch now, before this gets uglier. I will give you a fair price, and you can leave Stone Creek with your dignity intact. Corinne stepped forward, her voice steady. I am not selling, and I am not leaving. Nathaniel's mouth thinned. Then, you are a fool. The council is meeting this afternoon to review your complaint. And when they dismiss it, the auction will proceed. You will lose everything. She lifted her chin. Let them meet. I have evidence, and I have witnesses. Nathaniel laughed, sharp and bitter. Witnesses? Who? This cattle buyer you almost married? The town knows your history, Corinne. They know he abandoned you. They will not trust him. And they will not trust you. Cole's voice cut through the morning air, quiet and dangerous. Nathaniel, you have been spreading lies about your sister for months. You have sabotaged her ranch, intimidated her buyers, and manipulated the council. That is fraud and criminal conspiracy. If you think I am the only one who can testify to that, you are mistaken. Nathaniel's face darkened. You have no proof. Cole smiled, and it was not pleasant. Not yet. But I will. And when I do, you will lose more than a ranch. You will lose your reputation and your freedom. For a moment, Corinne thought Nathaniel might draw his gun. His hand twitched toward his belt, and the 2 ranch hands shifted in their saddles. But then Nathaniel seemed to think better of it. He jerked his horse's reins and turned away. You will regret this, he said over his shoulder. Both of you. The 3 men rode off, dust rising behind them. Corinne stood in the yard, her heart pounding. Cole turned to her, his face grim. He is going to move faster now. We need to find proof today, or we will lose our chance. She nodded. Where do we start? Cole thought for a moment. The ranch hands. The ones who work for Nathaniel. Someone there knows what he has been doing. If we can get one of them to talk, we have our witness. Corinne frowned. They are loyal to him. He pays well and punishes disloyalty. Cole met her eyes. Everyone has a price, Corinne. And everyone has a conscience. We just need to find the man whose conscience is louder than his fear. They rode out an hour later, taking the back trails toward the Hawthorne family ranch. Corinne knew the land well. She had grown up riding these hills, back when her father was alive and Nathaniel was just her older brother, not her enemy. The family ranch was larger than Juniper, sprawling across a wide valley with a big house and multiple outbuildings. They approached from the east, staying in the tree line. Cole dismounted and moved forward on foot, and Corinne followed. They crouched behind a stand of juniper and watched the ranch yard. Men moved between the barn and the corrals, working cattle. Corinne scanned the faces, looking for someone she recognized. Then, she saw him. A young hand named Daniel, maybe 20 years old, with sandy hair and a nervous way of moving. She had known him slightly before her father died. He had always been kind to her, and she remembered him looking uncomfortable when Nathaniel spoke cruelly. She touched Cole's arm and pointed. That one. Daniel. He is new. Only been with Nathaniel a year. If anyone might break, it is him. Cole studied the young man. How do we approach him without spooking him? Corinne thought. He usually eats lunch alone, away from the others. If we wait until midday, we might catch him by the creek. They settled in to watch. The sun climbed higher, and the heat pressed down. Corinne's throat was dry, but she did not move. Beside her, Cole was silent and patient, his focus absolute. She found herself watching him as much as the ranch. The way he scanned the yard, the way his hand rested near his gun but not on it, the way he seemed completely at ease in the tension. This was a side of him she had not known 6 years ago. He had been younger then, more restless, less certain. Now he moved like a man who had learned hard lessons and survived them. At noon, Daniel left the barn with a cloth-wrapped bundle and walked toward the creek that ran along the eastern edge of the property. Corinne and Cole moved through the trees, circling to intercept him. When Daniel sat down on a flat rock and unwrapped his lunch, Cole stepped out of the trees. Daniel froze, his eyes wide. Cole held up his hands, palms out. Easy, son. We are not here to hurt you. We just want to talk. Daniel looked past Cole and saw Corinne. His face went pale. Miss Hawthorne, I did not. Mr. Nathaniel said. Corinne stepped forward, her voice gentle. It is all right, Daniel. You are not in trouble. But I need your help. Daniel looked between them, clearly torn. I cannot, he said. If Mr. Nathaniel finds out I talked to you, he will fire me. Or worse. Cole crouched down to Daniel's eye level. What has he asked you to do, Daniel? The young man looked down at his hands. His voice was barely above a whisper. He told us to cut Miss Hawthorne's fences. Twice. And he paid some men from town to drive off her cattle and sell them in the next county. He said it was family business, that she was trying to cheat him out of his inheritance. Corinne felt a surge of vindication and anger. Did you see him give those orders? Daniel nodded miserably. I was there both times. He told us we would get a bonus if we kept quiet. Cole's voice was calm but firm. Daniel, what Nathaniel did is a crime. If you testify to what you saw, you can help stop him. And you will be protected. Daniel looked up, his eyes frightened. Protected how? Mr. Nathaniel has friends. Powerful friends. Cole met his gaze. The territorial marshal has more power than Nathaniel's friends. And if you help us, I will personally make sure you get work somewhere safe. You have my word. Daniel swallowed hard. He looked at Corinne. I am sorry, Miss Hawthorne. I did not want to hurt you. But I needed the job. She felt a wave of pity for the boy. I know, Daniel. But you can make it right now. He nodded slowly. All right. I will testify. But we have to go now, before Nathaniel notices I am gone. They moved quickly back to their horses. Daniel rode double behind Corinne, and they took the long way around to avoid the main road. By the time they reached Stone Creek, it was mid-afternoon. The town was busier now, and Corinne saw people watching as they rode past. She ignored them. At the marshal's office, Carver listened to Daniel's testimony with a grim expression. When the boy finished, the marshal leaned back and rubbed his face. This is enough, he said. I can arrest Nathaniel Hawthorne on charges of conspiracy and sabotage. But it is going to cause trouble. The town council meets in an hour, and half of them are Nathaniel's allies. Corinne straightened. Then, we go to the meeting. We present the evidence publicly. If the council tries to protect him, the town will see it. Carver nodded slowly. All right. But you better be ready for a fight. The council chamber was in the back of the land office, a cramped room with a long table and a dozen chairs. By the time Corinne, Cole, Daniel, and Marshal Carver arrived, the room was already full. The 5 council members sat at the table, looking uncomfortable. Nathaniel stood near the window, his arms crossed and his face dark with anger. When he saw Daniel, his expression twisted into something ugly. The council chairman, a gray-haired man named Morton, cleared his throat. This meeting is to review the complaint filed by Mrs. Corinne Hawthorne against her brother, Nathaniel Hawthorne. Mrs. Hawthorne, you have the floor. Corinne stepped forward. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 100 times, but her heart still pounded. Gentlemen, she said, I am here to present evidence that my brother has engaged in criminal sabotage to force the sale of my ranch. I have financial records showing deliberate interference with my operations. I have documentation of multiple incidents of property damage. And I have a witness who will testify that Nathaniel ordered these acts directly. Nathaniel's voice cut across the room, sharp and mocking. A witness? You mean a disgruntled ranch hand who is angry about being disciplined? That is not evidence. That is desperation. Daniel flinched, but Cole put a hand on his shoulder. The young man straightened and spoke, his voice shaking but clear. I am not disgruntled, sir. I am telling the truth. Mr. Nathaniel ordered me and 2 other hands to cut Miss Hawthorne's fences on June 5th and again on July 20th. He also paid men from town to drive off her cattle and sell them in Red Bluff. I was present when he gave those orders. The room went silent. Nathaniel's face went white, then red. That is a lie, he said. You have no proof. Marshal Carver stepped forward. I have Daniel's sworn testimony. That is proof enough to open a formal investigation. And if the investigation confirms his account, Mr. Hawthorne, You will be charged with fraud, conspiracy, and sabotage. One of the council members, a rancher named Sims, leaned forward. This is a serious accusation, Carver. We cannot just take the word of one ranch hand. Cole spoke then, his voice calm and carrying. You do not have to take his word alone. I am a registered cattle buyer, with contacts throughout this territory. I have reviewed Mrs. Hawthorne's financial records in detail. Her ranch is solvent and well managed. The auction was called based on false information. If this council proceeds with the sale, you will be complicit in fraud. Another council member, a banker named Wells, shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Sloan, you have a personal relationship with Mrs. Hawthorne, do you not? Your testimony is hardly impartial. Cole did not flinch. I knew Mrs. Hawthorne years ago. That does not change the facts in her ledgers or the testimony of her witness. If you want impartiality, bring in an independent auditor. But do not dismiss evidence, because it is inconvenient. Morton looked at Nathaniel. Mr. Hawthorne, do you have a response to these accusations? Nathaniel's jaw worked. He looked like a man trapped, and Corinne knew he was calculating his next move. Finally, he said, I have done nothing illegal. My sister is unstable. She has been since her husband died. She is inventing conspiracies to avoid admitting she cannot manage her own affairs. This entire spectacle is a desperate attempt to avoid responsibility. Corinne felt the words like a slap. She opened her mouth to respond, but Cole spoke first, his voice cutting and cold. That is slander, Nathaniel. And it is a coward's defense. If you are innocent, submit to investigation. Let the marshal examine your finances, question your men, and review your correspondence. If you have nothing to hide, you should welcome the scrutiny. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. I do not have to prove my innocence. The burden of proof is on her. Morton held up a hand. Gentlemen, Mrs. Hawthorne, please. This is getting out of hand. The council will take this matter under advisement. We will vote on whether to proceed with the auction or delay pending a marshal's investigation. But before we vote, I want to hear from anyone else in this room who has information relevant to this case. For a moment, no one moved. Then the door at the back of the room opened, and a man stepped in. He was older, maybe 60, with a weathered face and a cattleman's hat. Corinne recognized him as Jack Brennan, a rancher who owned land south of Stone Creek. Brennan looked at the council, then at Nathaniel. I have something to say, he said. Morton nodded. Go ahead, Mr. Brennan. Brennan took off his hat and turned it in his hands. I was approached by Nathaniel Hawthorne 3 months ago. He offered to buy my water rights at a generous price. When I asked why, he said he was consolidating territory. He said once he acquired his sister's ranch, he would control most of the water in this valley. He was very confident the acquisition would happen soon. The room erupted in murmurs. Nathaniel stepped forward, his voice rising. That is taken out of context, Brennan. I was speaking hypothetically. Brennan shook his head. No, Nathaniel, you were not. You told me the auction was a sure thing because you had made sure Corinne could not meet her obligations. Those were your words. The council members looked at each other. Morton's face had gone stony. Mr. Hawthorne, he said, this is very serious. If you have been manipulating council proceedings for personal gain, that is corruption. Marshal, I move that we suspend the auction immediately and open a full investigation. The other council members nodded, even Wells. Morton banged his gavel. Motion carried. The auction is suspended. Marshal Carver, you have authority to investigate Nathaniel Hawthorne and bring charges if warranted. Nathaniel's face went dark with rage. This is absurd, he said. You are taking the word of a vindictive sister and a drifter over mine? Morton met his gaze without blinking. We are taking the word of multiple witnesses and documented evidence. If you are innocent, the investigation will clear you. If you are not, you will face the consequences. Nathaniel looked around the room, his eyes wild. Then his gaze landed on Corinne, and she saw something cold and calculating settle over his features. He turned and walked out without another word. The door slammed behind him. Carver looked at Corinne. Mrs. Hawthorne, I need you to stay in town tonight. I am going to arrest your brother, and I want you somewhere safe in case he tries something foolish. Corinne nodded, her throat tight. Cole stepped closer to her, his presence solid and reassuring. She will stay at the boarding house, he said, and I will be nearby. Carver studied them both, then nodded. All right. I will send word when it is done. Outside, the street was fading into dusk. Corinne stood on the boardwalk, her legs shaking with relief and exhaustion. Cole stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. You did it, he said quietly. You stood up to him. She shook her head. We did it. If you had not come back, I would have lost everything. Cole turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. I came back because I could not stay away, Corinne. I tried. For 6 years I tried to forget you, but I could not. She felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were not angry. I do not know how to trust you, she said. I want to, but I do not know how. He reached out slowly and took her hand. Then let me show you, he said. Give me time, and I will prove I am not going anywhere. She looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. The setting sun cast gold light across the street, and for the first time in years, Corinne felt something like hope. All right, she said. The boarding house was a plain 2-story building with a narrow porch. The landlady, a stern woman named Mrs. Fletcher, showed Corinne to a small room on the 2nd floor. Cole took a room down the hall. That night, Corinne lay awake, listening to the sounds of the town. Footsteps on the boardwalk. Voices from the saloon. A dog barking. She thought about Nathaniel, about the ranch, about Cole. She thought about the chapel in Abilene and the life she had almost had. And she thought about the life she might still build if she was brave enough to try. In the morning, Marshal Carver came to the boarding house with news. Nathaniel had fled during the night. He had taken his best horse and ridden west, probably toward the territorial line. Carver had sent telegrams to the marshals in the neighboring territories. But Nathaniel had a head start. Corinne felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. She had wanted to see her brother face justice, but she was also glad to avoid another confrontation. At least he is gone, she said. Carver nodded. For now. But men like Nathaniel do not give up easy. You should be careful. Cole was standing nearby, his arms crossed. I will stay at the ranch for a while, he said. Make sure no one tries to cause more trouble. Corinne looked at him, and something settled in her chest. "Thank you," she said. They rode back to Juniper Ranch together through the clear morning light. The land looked different now, brighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. When they reached the house, Corinne dismounted and stood in the yard, looking at the hills and the sky. "This is mine," she said quietly. "No one can take it away." Cole came to stand beside her. "You earned it, Corinne. You fought for it." She turned to him. "I could not have won without you." He smiled, and it was a real smile, warm and unguarded. "Then I am glad I came back." Over the next days, they fell into a rhythm. Cole helped with the ranch work, mending fences and checking cattle. Corinne worked on her ledgers and met with buyers who had heard the news and wanted to do business again. In the evenings, they sat on the porch and talked. They talked about the past, about the mistakes they had made, about the years they had lost. They talked about the future, about what they wanted and what they feared. And slowly, carefully, they began to trust each other again. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink, Cole said, "I never finished what I started 6 years ago, Corinne." Corinne looked at him, her heart beating fast. "What do you mean?" He stood and held out his hand. "Come with me." She took his hand, and he led her down the porch steps and out into the yard. The sky was immense above them, the air cooling. He stopped and turned to face her. "6 years ago," he said, "I was supposed to marry you. I was supposed to stand with you and promise to be yours for the rest of my life. I did not get to do that, and I have regretted it every day since." Corinne felt her throat tighten. "Cole," he shook his head gently. "Let me finish. I know I do not deserve another chance. I know I hurt you. But if you will have me, Corinne, I want to do it right this time. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you here, on this ranch, in this place you have made yours. I want to be the man you needed me to be 6 years ago." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she did not try to stop them. "I was so angry at you," she said. "For so long." "I know," he said. "And you had every right to be. But I am here now, and I am not leaving. Not unless you send me away." She looked at him, at the man he had become, strong and steady and real. And she thought about the girl she had been 6 years ago, desperate and hopeful and foolish. She was not that girl anymore. She had survived and built something on her own. But she also knew she did not want to be alone anymore. "I am still afraid," she said. Cole nodded. "So am I. But I would rather be afraid with you than safe without you." She smiled through her tears. "That is a terrible reason to get married." He grinned. "It is the only reason that matters." She laughed, and it felt like something breaking open inside her. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into him, let herself feel the warmth and solidity of him. They stood there in the fading light, holding each other, and Corinne felt the years of hurt and anger begin to ease. 2 weeks later, they were married in the small church in Stone Creek. Marshall Carver stood as witness, along with Jack Brennan and Daniel, and a handful of townspeople who had come to support Corinne. It was nothing like the grand wedding her father had once planned, or the secret ceremony she and Cole had tried to have 6 years ago. It was simple and real, and it was theirs. Afterward, They rode back to the ranch together, side by side. The sun was setting again, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Corinne looked at Cole, at the way the light caught in his hair, at the quiet smile on his face. "What are you thinking?" she said. He glanced at her. "I am thinking I am the luckiest man alive." She laughed. "You are also the most sentimental." He reached over and took her hand. "Only with you." They reached the ranch as the stars began to appear. Inside the house, Cole built a fire while Corinne made coffee. They sat together at the table, the same table where they had once spread ledgers and planned their fight. Now there was no fight, only the quiet comfort of being together. That night, they lay in the narrow bed in the room that had been Corinne's alone for 2 years. Cole held her close, his hand warm against her back. She listened to his heartbeat, steady and real, and felt something settle deep inside her. She had spent so many years afraid. Afraid of being alone, afraid of being controlled, afraid of being hurt again. But lying here in the dark with Cole beside her, she realized she was not afraid anymore. She was home. In the days that followed, life on Juniper Ranch settled into a new rhythm. Cole worked alongside Corinne, and together they rebuilt what Nathaniel had tried to destroy. Buyers returned, cattle sold, fences stayed standing. The ranch began to thrive. Word came a month later that Nathaniel had been arrested in Colorado territory. He was extradited back to face charges, and the trial was swift. With Daniel's testimony and Jack Brennan's account, the jury convicted Nathaniel of fraud and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 5 years in the territorial prison. Corinne attended the sentencing. She sat in the courtroom and watched her brother led away in chains. And she felt no triumph, only a deep sadness for the man he might have been if he had chosen differently. Afterward, Cole was waiting for her outside the courthouse. He took her hand without a word, and they walked back through the town together. That evening, they sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the hills. Corinne leaned against Cole's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her. "Do you ever regret it?" she said. "Staying here instead of going somewhere new?" Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "No. This is where I am supposed to be. With you." She smiled. "Even when I am stubborn and difficult?" "Especially then," he said. She laughed, and he kissed her temple. They sat there as the stars came out, one by one, filling the sky with light. And Corinne thought about how strange life was, how it could take you to the edge of losing everything and then give you back more than you ever expected. She had her ranch. She had her name. She had her freedom. And she had Cole, who had come back when it mattered, who had stayed when it was hard, who had chosen her again and again. A year passed. The ranch grew stronger. Corinne and Cole built a small addition to the house, a room for the future they were planning. They talked about children, about expanding the herd, about maybe buying the land that bordered theirs to the south. They talked about everything, and the talking was easy now, without the weight of secrets and hurt between them. One spring morning, Corinne woke early and walked out to the porch. The air was cool and fresh, the sky just beginning to lighten. She stood there and looked at the land stretching away in all directions. The hills and the valley and the distant line of trees. She thought about the girl she had been, the woman she had become. She thought about all the ways life could break you, and all the ways you could put yourself back together. Cole came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Morning," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. She leaned back against him. "Morning." He rested his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" She smiled. "I am thinking how lucky I am." He turned her around to face him, his eyes warm and serious. "We both are," he said. And then he kissed her, slow and sweet, and Corinne felt the last piece of herself that had been held apart finally let go. She was whole. She was home. And she was loved. They stood there on the porch as the sun rose, painting the world in gold. And Corinne knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The cattle buyer who could have destroyed her ranch had saved her name instead. And in saving her, he had found his own way home. The years that followed were not without their challenges. Droughts came and passed. Harsh winters tested the cattle and the fences. There were lean times when money was tight and the work was endless. But Corinne and Cole faced each season side by side, and the ranch endured. They hired hands when they could afford it, and Daniel became their foreman, loyal and steady. The town of Stone Creek grew slowly, and so did Corinne's reputation. People no longer whispered about her behind their hands. They spoke of her with respect, as the woman who had stood up to corruption and won, who had built something lasting from nothing. Cole's business thrived as well. He became known as a fair dealer, a man whose word was good and whose judgment was sound. Buyers and sellers trusted him, and he and Corinne worked together, combining their strengths to make the ranch profitable year after year. They had 2 children, a daughter first, and then a son. The daughter had Corinne's chestnut hair and Cole's steady eyes. The son had Cole's smile and Corinne's fierce determination. They grew up running wild over the hills, learning to ride and rope and mend fences, learning the land the way their parents had learned it. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the house was still, Corinne and Cole would sit on the porch and watch the stars. Sometimes they talked about the past, about the chapel in Abilene and the years they had lost. But more often, they talked about the future, about the life they were building and the legacy they would leave. One evening, years after Nathaniel's trial, Corinne received a letter. It was from her brother, written from prison. She held it for a long time, unopened, her heart heavy. Cole found her sitting at the table, the letter still sealed in her hands. "Are you going to read it?" he said. She looked up at him. "I do not know if I want to." He sat down beside her. "You do not have to. But if you do, I am here." She took a breath and opened the letter. Nathaniel's handwriting was cramped and unsteady. The words were simple. He said he was sorry. He said he had been consumed by greed and pride, and that he had hurt the one person who had never done anything but try to be free. He said he did not expect forgiveness, but that he wanted her to know he regretted what he had done. Corinne read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and set it aside. She did not cry. She did not feel anger. She felt only a deep, quiet sadness for the brother she had lost long before the trial. "Do you forgive him?" Cole asked. She thought about it. "I do not know," she said finally. "Maybe someday, but not yet." Cole took her hand. "That is all right." She looked at him, at the lines around his eyes, at the gray beginning to show in his hair, at the life they had built together. "I forgive you," she said. He smiled, and it was the smile she loved, warm and real and full of everything they had survived. "I know," he said, "and I am grateful every day." The ranch continued to grow. Juniper Ranch became one of the most respected properties in the territory, known for quality cattle and honest dealing. Corinne became a voice on the town council, the first woman to serve, and she used that position to fight for fair treatment and honest governance. Cole was elected to the Cattlemen's Association, and together they worked to improve conditions for ranchers across the region. Their children grew and eventually took over more of the ranch work. The daughter married a school teacher and stayed nearby, raising her own family on a small homestead. The son worked the ranch alongside his parents, learning everything they had to teach. And through it all, Corinne and Cole remained each other's anchor. They had learned the hard way that love was not just a feeling, but a choice, made again and again, in the small moments and the hard ones. They chose each other every day, in the work and the laughter and the quiet comfort of knowing they were not alone. On their 20th wedding anniversary, they rode out together to the high ridge that overlooked the ranch. It was the same place Corinne had gone the day after her husband's death, when she had decided to buy this land and make it hers. They dismounted and stood looking at the valley spread out below them, at the house and the barn and the corrals, at the cattle grazing and the smoke rising from the chimney. 20 years, Cole said. "It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all." Corinne smiled. "I know what you mean." He looked at her, and his eyes were as warm as they had been the day they married. "I would do it all again," he said. "Every hard moment, every fight, every fear, because it brought me here, with you." She reached up and touched his face. "So would I." They kissed there on the ridge, with the wind in their hair and the sun on their faces. And Corinne felt the same joy she had felt on that morning years ago when she had realized she was whole. They had built a life together. They had faced down enemies and hardship and loss. They had raised children and built a legacy. And they had loved each other through all of it, with a fierce and steady love that had only grown stronger with time. As they rode back down to the ranch, side by side, Corinne thought about the girl she had been, standing in that chapel in Abilene with her heart full of hope. That girl had not gotten the life she planned, but she had gotten something better. She had gotten a life she earned, a love she chose, and a home she built with her own hands. And that, Corinne thought as the ranch came into view, was more than enough. It was everything.